This meeting of the Lincoln County Planning Commission. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. Yes, it's being recorded. And the order of events tonight will be as follows. For public hearing, staff will introduce the agenda item and present a summary of the staff report. The applicant will then be asked to explain the proposal in further detail and answer any questions from the Planning Commission members. I will then open the floor to public comment, first in person support of the application, and then for persons in opposition of the application. When you step up to the podium, please state your name, address, and speak clearly into the microphone. Speakers are encouraged to address only new and relevant information pertaining to the item. Above all, please be cordial to all meeting participants and refrain from side conversations. Please, all conversations be directed to the front and not towards each other, or you'll be asked to leave. Lastly, decisions on conditional use permits applications may be appealed to the County Board of Commissioners by submitting a letter to the Planning and Zoning Office within 5 business days. All right. With that, I will do roll call. Commissioner Enstead.
Here.
Commissioner Hogan.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Scott.
Here.
Commissioner Poppins.
Here.
And Commissioner Jungling is also here. All right. With that, we'll do approval of the meeting minutes.
If there's no changes, I'd offer a motion to, as printed, approve.
All right, thank you. We
I will second.
have a motion and a second. Sorry, doing paperwork here. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. I will do roll call. Commissioner Enstead.
Yes.
Commissioner Hogan.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. All right, the meeting agenda. Mr. Brown, are there any changes on the agenda for the night? All right, thank you. Ask for a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
Second.
A motion and a second. All right, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll do a roll call. Commissioner Enstead.
Yes.
Commissioner Hogan.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. All right. At this time, I'll ask for any public input on agenda items not related to what's on the agenda. So any other concerns or anything you'd like us to hear about, feel free to come up and speak. Seeing none, I'll close the floor. We have no old business tonight, so Mr. Brown, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This first item is an application. The applicant for this is Julie Palmer. It's on behalf of her father, who's Keith Palmer, who's the owner of the property. Subject property is approximately a half a mile east of the city of Worthing. Parcel size is approximately 10.52 acres. As you can see, the property is currently zoned RR rural residential. Surrounding property to the west is Lake Zone. All other property surrounding is Zone A1 agricultural. Subject property, again, is undeveloped. Property to the west is developed with single-family dwellings, residential uses. Goes to this adjoining property. These adjoining properties here were pre-density zoning, so they were lots of record. These are some photos that staff took of the site. As you can see, this again, the site is currently vacant, surrounded by agricultural properties. The first thing you can really see is the property, which should be to the west, is a rural residential developed property. Subject purpose for this rezoning, the applicant did not submit a concept plan with the application. In subsequent conversations with the applicant intends, or the applicant's representative on behalf of the applicant intends to sell the property, and that there are potential purchasers that would utilize the property for an event center on that property is essentially the concept. But if rezoned, any commercial uses would be allowable on that property. Comprehensive plan identifies the subject property and the surrounding area as an urban expansion area. City of Worthing has identified this area as a nodal commercial business area. However, the City of Worthing does not have services available to this property, meaning that it would have to be developed as a rural property with septic systems. Staff analysis or staff finding is that the application is not consistent with the Lincoln County Comprehensive Plan, primarily because of the stipulation that services be available for development for the property because it's in an urban expansion area. Also, that the requested application is not consistent with the zoning of adjacent parcels, being the RR rural residential to the west and the surrounding area that is zoned A1 agricultural. So again, staff finding is it's not consistent with the comprehensive plan. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
As I'm reading this, Toby, the staff report, it's saying that the City of Worthing, their comp plan identifies the parcel's future community, commercial, office, professional, but city services are not available to the parcel, and they don't have any plans as to when they will get out there?
To the best of my knowledge, it's not planned, but I did invite staff from the City of Worthing are here tonight
Okay.
to answer any questions that you might have about that. Again, I should mention that this item was tabled at the previous month's Planning Commission meeting because of questions that arose, infrastructure availability, what the City of Worthing wanted as far as land use and as far as infrastructure development and those kind of things. And so we did re-advertise this. This is a full public hearing, and you can take public comment, and would suggest that you do. So.
All right.
So, Mr. Brown, they will inform us at some point on what their thoughts are on the, I know that we had some discussion at the last meeting about sewer and how that would play into how it was developed. We'll be able to put those answers to bed tonight.
Hope so.
Okay.
But I think what I think the real question is tonight for them is basically what are you going to require for the development of the property? Whether or not we realize that infrastructure is not available there, but the concern of the applicant, at least in the conversations that I've had with her, is what would be required as far as development of the property. And at one time, would it require paved streets, and would it require curb and gutter and water sewer lines stubbed out? So that was kind of my understanding was kind of the discussion that the city would probably be best to answer that question.
Thank you, Toby. Commissioners, other questions for staff? Mr. Scott, do you have anything?
I do not, Lee. Thank you.
All right, if there's no further questions, I will ask the applicant to come forward and tell us a little bit more about the application.
All right, as you remember last time, original plan was to have a,
Can you say your name and
oh,
address
I'm
for the record,
sorry,
please?
Julie Palmer, 3211 West Bitterroot Street.
Thank you, Julie.
So last time, as I mentioned, the plan was to do 1 acre, 8 lots residential, but Worthing wanted me to put in $1 million sewer system, even though the services aren't available. So then you would also need septic. And that just isn't feasible financially. So going back and forth, talking to Jason, because we've had people wanting to do house, storage, or a vent barn. And by the way, if they did an event barn, it would be far to the east by the gravel road. So since I last met with you, thankful for somebody that reached out to me on email and suggested I talk to Jason about larger lots. And he agreed that if we did up to 4 2.5 acre lots with access from the gravel road to the east, so it's like a cul-de-sac, whether it be commercial or residential, he would be okay with septic. So,
Okay.
and then whoever if the person, that intended to do the event barn wanted to buy it, they would get a conditional use permit. So Jason was kind enough to explain how we could work this out. And he's here to answer your questions too.
Okay, thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Julie, commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
So your plan now would be to make it into 4 lots? And you said residential or commercial?
Depending on what you decide. So if it's not allowed to be commercial, then we would do large residential lots. But I've tried to sell residential lots, and there's a lot of interest for people that want to do shows or storage units or event barn. So, especially with the pandemic now, there's a lot of work, live, people want to have a shop, whether they do woodwork or mechanic or whatever, so. Yeah. And there's railroad tracks behind the property, so it's not like, it's this peaceful setting, you know what I mean? It makes sense to be commercial.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, with that, I will ask anybody that's in favor of the application to come forward, please. Okay, seeing none, I will ask anybody in opposition of the application to come forward, please.
My name is Hal Schroeder. I live right across at 47283 280th Street. So, obviously, I'm right next door to this place seeking a redetermination. I obviously strongly oppose it. The land is zoned residential, and I would say for pretty good reason. There's 4 houses directly to the west of this land. I think it goes without saying that, and probably a lot of people, that we don't want to live right next to commercial property, especially with a big question mark on it as far as what can be built there. With this going forward, I guess I'd have to ask, just because if I try to sell my house and just because I can't sell it, does that mean I get to rezone it to whatever I want? The way I see it is, I'm sorry she can't sell it, but that's not your guys' problem, and it's certainly not mine. So, with that being said, I hope this committee chooses not to spot zone this property for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. All right, anybody else? Yes.
Good evening, Board. Keith Winia. I live in the middle lot at 47281 280th Street in Worthing. Yeah, I have to disagree with Julie about just because there's a railroad track, it's not peaceful.
Can you speak in a little bit closer, Keith?
I
Thank
said
you.
I have to disagree with Julie that it's not peaceful. It's just because there's a railroad track. I mean, the railroad track runs right through town, and people of Worthing love their town, and you just learn to accept the railroad track. It is peace and quiet out there. That's the reason why roughly 9 years ago I bought the property. It's all single-family homes. We all care about our property. We all talk to each other. We wave when we mow our lawns on the same day on Saturday. It's a little community outside of the bigger community of Worthing. So I just would encourage the board to take that in mind, that it's, if your guys' own personal homes are in the same spot, I mean, like Hal mentioned, we don't know what's gonna show up there. There's no promise. I mean, you could say event center, you could say residential, divided lot, there's no promise there. There's nothing holding back from, I don't know what, getting built there. We all have kids and pets. I mean, me personally, I have 5 kids, all younger. They all play outside. I don't know what kind of traffic commercial is gonna bring. I do know residential, though, people will care about the property. Most of us all do. We care about our neighbors. We respect our neighbors. Residential is what it is now, and that's where it should stay. It's more conducive to what's, as far as what's out there now. And I think Hal is on the right track as far as saying, I don't know what it's gonna do to my property, you know, value, even though I'm not looking to sell, you know, for many, many years. I would just put me more at ease as a neighbor to know that there's gonna be more people moving in that actually care about, you know, the land than some other place or commercial thing that's gonna bring in more traffic at night, maybe, I don't know. Or clientele with the, if you ever attended a event center, you know, yeah, what kind of crowd is gonna be there? How late they're gonna stay? What kind of mess are they gonna make? You know, who's gonna show up to it? You know, if there's gonna be unruly people, I don't know. My family lives there. That's something that's drawing negative attention to our neighborhood. And I just appreciate the board's thought and consideration on that, of just kind of keeping it away from the area. But yeah, that's all I gotta say, and I appreciate you guys' time,
Thank you very much.
so.
All right, is there anybody else that would like to speak in opposition of the application?
Hello, I'm Ken Sweeter. I'm chairman of Lynn Township, and I'm not here to be for or against this project. I always bring up the deal that she said there's gonna be an event center, and it's gonna be based on the east side of the road. The township is not in favor of having an access off a gravel road. If they have the access, it's gonna have to come off a county road. And that would be more feasible than a gravel road. I just want to bring that to your attention.
Would that be same if it's commercial or residential? You'd still want the same access?
When you put in an event center, that's one thing. If you're putting in a house, would be a different, you're talking more traffic.
Okay, yeah.
And that would not be feasible to come off a gravel road. It'd be more feasible to come off the county road.
Okay,
That's all I'm suggesting. Thank you.
Would the township likely, I mean, if I understood your question, would they support a residential access?
Probably would.
I think that'd probably be safer.
Safer, yes, I would, and there would be a lot less traffic.
Right.
And you know, you're talking about an event center, you're talking a huge amount of traffic.
Yep, no, I
And
understand
we're
that.
talking dust problems, and we're gonna have problems down the road with that, and it's gonna address the township. Any other questions?
I think we're good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else that's like to speak in opposition of the application? All right, with that, I'll close the floor to public input. I think before we ask a motion, though, why don't we, if the city from Worthing is here, maybe we can get their perspective. We can ask them to come forward and ask them some questions before we make a motion.
Jason Schrader, 208 Walnut Street in Worthing. I'd be the zoning administrator for the city.
Thanks for your time tonight, Jason.
Yes.
Appreciate that. Commissioners, what questions do you have for Worthing?
So Julie had mentioned that you would be in support of either commercial or residential if it's larger lots. Is that in fact true? I mean, is that something that, and it would be septic, and so you wouldn't
It
require
would have
that?
to be septic because don't have any plans of right now annexing it in to get the water and sewer out there.
And you wouldn't require the, I know before it was the millions of dollars worth of work that she would have needed to have done, and
We would like water and sewer infrastructure if there's gonna be a street out there. That way in 10 years, 20 years, when the city does reach out there, the infrastructure is there, is our only request. I know it's a lot, but there's other developments around Sioux Falls that didn't put water and sewer in, and now they're having problems, is my understanding, at the homeowner's cost. So we're trying to avoid that. I mean, it's probably a ways out, but that's what we're trying to avoid here.
Is that currently rural water serving that area?
Yes, yeah.
So you'd have them all run one line out, maybe to the ditch to hook up to the
I
rural
think
water?
there's a water line that runs right along east-west there.
And then in the future, when the city came through, they could just disconnect and reconnect, would that be the way that
I'd
would
talk to
work?
the engineer, but yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And so my understanding, you were saying 10 to 20 years, so it'll be a ways
We have
out.
no plans of it right now.
Okay,
I mean, but you always gotta plan ahead,
right. Oh, absolutely.
so.
So the folks that live out there, I mean, change will be coming, just so you all know, change will be coming. It's not always gonna be your rural area, so.
And in the staff findings, it said that your long-term plan for those 20 years down the road or whatnot, that is set to be more of a commercial setting.
Yeah, with that intersection there, it's a main road or whatever we called it, an arterial road, and we envisioned, yeah, gas stations and mini malls or shopping mall kind of deal, little shops there on that
So
corner.
that is-
Commercial, office,
That is the long-term plan of the
that
city.
is in our future land use map, yeah, yep. Yep.
All right, other commissioners, any questions for Jason at the city?
Chairman, and I do have a question, Eric.
Yes.
Jason, could you explain to me, the way it's been presented to us is the 8 plan that you would require curb, gutter, sewer. A 4 lot, it would not, and if it's rezoned and goes to like an event barn, it also would not require that. Are we understanding that right?
If there's a street involved somehow, infrastructure we would request infrastructure. But if it's just individual lots, we can't, I don't know, can't enforce infrastructure. But if there's plans for a street eventually ever there, yeah, that's where we need the infrastructure.
So a cul-de-sac model that came off of the county road, you would not require something. I mean, if it was just an entrance to 4, you're talking about a connecting street, you would require it,
Correct. Correct.
just so I'm clear here.
Yeah, no, and would it be allowed gravel? Would you
Yeah.
wouldn't be, okay.
Yeah.
So just so we're all saying, or at least I'm on the same page. If she was to go to this lot plan with a cul-de-sac, they could develop that off the septic, and you guys just go with that and go along with that plan.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the question, Commissioner Scott?
I just wanted to clarify that if this 4 lot plan with a cul-de-sac, the city will really find that if we're on septic, is that fair?
I didn't catch all that yet either.
I think what we need to remind ourselves that we're trying to look if this is a rezone change and not try to contemplate, I think, what they're gonna do if it doesn't change. It's appropriate to make the change to a commercial or not and try to focus on that. So if we could, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and also if it's an events hall or storage units or whatever it is, that'll be a conditional use permit that will come up later. And right now, it's just commercial or residential. All right. Commissioner Scott, any further questions?
No, I'm good.
All right. Commissioners, you good with? Thank you, Jason. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I will ask for a motion so we can have further discussion amongst ourselves. So the motion is to rezone it commercial is what the application is for.
To move it along, Mr. Chairman, for purpose of discussion, motion to approve the rezone.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Commissioners, discussion.
Unfortunately, I cannot support the motion, Mr. Chairman. I do think there's just too much vagueness and appropriate, not yet at this time for this change of use. So I will not be supporting the motion to change it at this time. Thank you.
Any further discussion, commissioners?
I don't know if you can hear me very well or not. I think that we've had this known correctly right now, and I think that we should just continue to exhausted the options to and found some ways that you can use the property how it is currently, and so I'm not going to support rezone there.
Thank you. Commissioners?
I guess I would maybe take the opposite. If the landowner would like to have it as commercial and that fits into Worthing's long-term plans, I guess I would vote in favor of it.
Good. All right, just give my 2 cents. Yeah, I've seen it too many times where I know what Worthing does say is gonna be the future use. I don't know what that will be, and that future use could change, I could see. I just have a hard time putting a commercial entity in the middle of either ag land or residential now land, and that's just my personal thought, so. All right, with that, I will ask for a roll call. Commissioner Ensted,
So just to be clear,
to vote yea is to rezone it commercial. Nay is to
Not
leave it as residential the way it is.
yeah, so nay for me.
Commissioner Hogan,
No.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
No.
Was that Mr. Scott?
That was a no.
That was a no, okay. Commissioner Poppins?
No.
I am a no. Who did I miss? Wendy, Commissioner Hogan, did I miss you?
No.
We got everybody.
Okay. Is that everyone?
Yep.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this next application is an application from Mark and Teresa Blow. Subject property is approximately 1,300 feet west of the city of Harrisburg. I realize I made a mistake in the staff report on that, but it's actually west and not east of the city of Harrisburg. Subject property is currently zoned A1 agricultural, as you can see, as is all surrounding properties surrounding this property. Subject property to the east and to the west is developed with single-family dwellings. Property to the north is part agricultural / I'll call floodplain area. Again, as part of what I listed in the staff analysis is that this at one time was one parcel that was developed by the applicant. Subsequent to that, the applicant worked with the city of Harrisburg to replat the property into 2 lots. The applicant then sold this part of the property with the house and with an outbuilding on it, and now is intending to rezone this property so that there can obtain a building eligibility for the property. These are some pictures that staff took of the surrounding area, identifying that again it is vacant property currently at the time or at this time. Comprehensive plan identifies this property and the surrounding area as an urban expansion area. The city of Harrisburg does identify this property as low-density residential. City services are not available to this property at this time. Staff finding is that the application is not consistent with the comprehensive plan, primarily because of density zoning. Again, in 1995, Lincoln County adopted density zoning, which essentially froze all building to essentially 1 per quarter with an eligibility. So this property did have an eligibility and then was split to not have an eligibility on this adjoining parcel. And also, the application is not consistent with surrounding zoning because it's all zoned A1 agricultural. As I also noted in the staff analysis, the nearest rural residential zone property would, I think it's 3.5 miles away from this subject property. So essentially, the term spot zone would be applicable again to this application. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, could you remind me again, Toby, exactly when did this parcel get separated out?
I think it was 2014.
2014.
It was split. The original parcel was split out in 2008
Yep.
to allow it to be built on.
Yeah, but this one would have been separated.
Then when they separated it, and that's under the jurisdiction of Harrisburg, so our office.
So
didn't have-
that's exactly, okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other commissioners, question for staff? So, Toby, what is it zone now? Is it ag now?
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
Yep.
And it is in the jurisdiction of Harrisburg. Do they have,
For plating.
for plating, do they have any plans to allow that in the future, or?
I don't know if we can show it close enough on here. They are pretty close to this property, and in discussions with staff, is my understanding is they intend to probably this summer or next would run sewer across the north part of this. There is, so it's not contiguous to be annexable today, but I would say within pretty soon it will be. But this is 9 Mile that runs along here, so it's going to be, depending on how they get, I've been told they're going to run infrastructure up here, but we're not going to run that across 9 Mile.
Yeah,
I mean, we're going to have to
correct,
find another direction for that. So,
There's a new school going. Harrisburg's gonna be building a school out there. So
What was that, Commissioner Hogan?
Harrisburg's gonna be building a school out that way. And so,
Do you know if that's on the north side or the south side of the creek then?
I do not. Middle school will be on the north side. North, yeah.
Just the north side. So the services still won't reside on where this property is then?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, I believe they're in the process of annexing this property right here. I have seen development plans for this. So, and this would be the subject property right here.
Okay. Commissioners, any additional questions for staff? Seeing none, I will ask the applicant to come forward and tell us a little bit more.
Right. Thank you. I've got a handout if you guys want a copy of it. I don't know if you can see it, if they can see what's here or not. Where's it? Oh, over here. Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Oh, so I can see it, then they can see it. Okay, I see how this works. So we bought this Mark Blow, 2600 South Kiera Court, Sioux Falls, South Dakota now. Prior to that, I lived in the house adjacent to this property. We purchased that property at auction in 2001, October, while the World Trade Centers were still smoking. And the economy is kind of depressed, but we purchased that property then. We then subdivided it after 2008 and 9, taking a look at the economic crisis going on, not knowing if you're going to lose your job or what. I really didn't want all 11 acres of my property on my mortgage as collateral. So I broke that off. So if the world came to an end, I'd at least have a place to pitch a tent. So that was the purpose initially, to subdivide that out. That question comes up a lot. In recent years, with the increasing property taxes, our property taxes have over doubled in the last 5 years. And I'm looking at retirement. I don't make that much money. I had a big mortgage. so we elected to sell it. One of the primary reasons was this tax value you see here is probably at 50% of what it's assessed at, assessment. So we were staring at, if that goes to 90% assessment of market value, I don't know what it is, $25,000, $30,000 a year on the value of that property we had. So that just, in combination with a large mortgage, didn't combine into my retirement plan real well. So we sold it, hoping we could rebuild in that community. We've been there for 20 years. My son built the War Memorial over at the Veterans War Memorial at the cemetery for his Eagle Scout project. But so we have a connection to that community. We like to stay there. I understand spot zoning isn't a good topic. It's not common, but it is not without precedent in northern Lincoln County. It has happened. I don't want to dwell on that a lot, but looking over the zoning maps, I noticed a couple that did kind of pique my eye, and it's over on 273rd Street, just on the west side of the interstate. There's a string of acreages along this road, and in 2006, this was spot zoned as rural residential, and then again, in 2010, there was a spot, excuse me, again, just down the road in 2020, wasn't it, or 10? 2020, a new rural residential was approved there for an acreage to go in. Really, I did not wish to go with a spot zone. I would just soon be able to do something. A lot is happening here in Harrisburg. This piece of property here, Tiger Meadows, is under construction already. They're moving dirt there. I believe that has been annexed, but it doesn't show up on their map yet. Has it officially been annexed or not? I'm not sure. They're moving dirt there anyway, that's all I know, and there's a subdivision proposed there. If that were annexed, our property would be very close to that. This hatched area I showed, which is the property that surrounds my original property, I talked to that landowner today. He was in support of it. I don't know if he came to here, but he did some platting here a few years ago, and he signed a voluntary annexation agreement. So at such time those become conjoined properties, he will have the opportunity to or be required to annex one or the other. And if that happens, then I would be, if I needed to, I would have to annex. But that could be 6 weeks, it could be 16 years. Who knows how that is? Because as Toby said, I've heard a lot of inklings, and it's my understanding that this property here from the lift station on Cliff, there's a proposed trunk sewer line that goes all the way out to the west side of Minnesota Avenue. And from the discussions I had with people involved, they want to get that done as soon as possible. I assume when that happens, they would annex that ground for that sewer line. I don't know exactly how they go about doing that, but at that time, that would probably enable this property to be annexed and me also. And actually, if this Tiger Meadows has already been annexed, there's only 50 feet here or 100 feet that's separating that. So I think there are some special circumstances going on in that part of the county that would, it conforms to that neighborhood. We did receive a approach permit from La Valley Township. It was discussed with them and it was unopposed. Right now, there is, I think, if we had a bigger picture, I think there's 10 acreages on that mile right now, the way it is. So approach permit has been procured. To follow a few of the bullet points that are in the staff's report, one of the things highlighted is to provide for orderly and efficient economic development. I think we're in the bullseye of Harrisburg expansion, and annexation kind of appears imminent to us. We informed the city of Harrisburg of our intent at the December planning and zoning meeting, discussed what our goal was, that we had submitted a request for a rezone. That went without opposition, had heard no disagreement from them whatsoever. And I did talk with Mike McMahon a month or two ago, 3 months ago, about what would happen if we got annexed. They would probably annex, all that property is A1. They would annex that in as ag. Harrisburg has 2 ag categories, an Ag 1 and a new Ag 2, which I really don't know what that is. But it would go into the city as that. So those were discussions I had with them 2 or 3, 4 months ago. I was hoping we could do some kind of a variance or conditional use upon such time it becomes annexed or something, but that isn't a viable alternative according to the planning folks. The only alternative it appears you guys have is to go with the rural residential. So one of the other items highlighted was to manage growth within the framework of the development plan and municipal comprehensive. I guess we've discussed this in depth with Harrisburg, with La Valley Township and all those concerned, and we've heard no opposition from anybody at this point. I made it known that that was our intentions when we sold our house to all our neighbors and the adjoining neighbors, and to the best of my knowledge, there's no opposition. A couple other items I picked out that aren't, that were mentioned in there to achieve number 7 and 13 in the staff report. Electrical is on site. That's right in the ditch. Rural water, I gave them an easement to cross that property in 2007. When I originally purchased that, the water line came up to the east edge of that property and up to the west edge of that property, but did not connect through there. And they wanted to complete that connection and make the loop that's better for, they don't have to clean out the end of the lines and so forth, so I gave them that. That water's on the property. City sanitary, that line is coming in pretty soon. It's on the north side of the creek. Probably not gonna be anything available to anybody on that side of the creek until such time bigger areas get subdivided. And it's not easy to get 404 permits and environmental clearance for going underneath creeks, so we'll see how that goes. That could be a long time. Couple other comments. I'll just jump and not eat up too much of your time. Consideration was limited to develop of those areas. This is item 9 that's in the comprehensive plan. There are elements in there where those areas where parcel size and competing land use have substantially reduced the economic viability and future success of agricultural operations. When I bought that, it has a farm number, and I haven't checked with FSA since I sold the house, if I still qualify as a farm or not, but we've raised sweet corn and alfalfa off that ground for the last 15 years. Our hopes is to build a house and continue to do that. That's kind of a good retirement hobby. I enjoy doing that, so that was kind of our goal there. And to preserve sensitive areas, you know, if that does get annexed and go to high density, currently right now, there's a summit in that lot. Right through the middle of that lot's a high spot. So the majority of that water comes back towards the road. It doesn't go over the edge. And I think by having 1 acreage, we plan on building one place with one shop at this point. And that would be better than if it gets annexed and high density or something gets in there with more runoff right alongside the creek. I think environmentally, it's better to have 1 unit. It conforms to the neighborhood and the other properties. So I think it's a benefit to have that low density item. I'm not sure what the low density discussion is and if that's what Harrisburg's low density definition is or not, exactly how that works. But I guess time is of the essence for us for 2 reasons. Inflation. I've done a lot of these works. That's my weekend and nighttime job. I have a full cabinet shop. I do a lot of the work myself, and I just turned 61 last fall, so I'd like to get something done the next couple of years if I can. So waiting for that annexation to happen and sewer to appear, like I said, it could be 20 years from now. It's going to probably happen at some point in time, but sooner than that. But I guess that's my input.
Thank you, Mark.
I do presentations for a living.
Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Did you realize that when you divided your property, you were giving up the building eligibility at that time?
Oh, yeah, I knew there was one on there. Although looking at the agreements, it looks like you could argue almost you can get two if it's a family or something, put two in one location, but that's, yeah, I knew that was gone at that point in time.
Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none. Thank you, Mark.
All right.
Appreciate it. All right, at this time, I will ask anybody in favor of the application to come forward and speak.
Hello, Patrick Nord, 47464 274th Street. Mark has been my neighbor. Has it been 20 years? Yeah, so I live along this road. If you look, I'm just like, my house is on the third lot to the east, basically. I also own the next lot next to that, which I haven't built on, but it does have a building eligibility, so, but anyways, like Mark said, there's acreages all along this road. That particular space where he would like to build one more single-family residential home, I don't see that it would be a problem. I would be in favor of it. Mark's a civil engineer. He's gonna build his own home, and he'll build a beautiful home that's gonna probably add to the value of this neighborhood and along this road. It's a nice drive along there. So as long as Mark's intention is to just build one single-family dwelling there, one more I don't think would be a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else in favor of the application?
Brian Jans, 47452 274th Street. I live directly east of this property. Kind of the same discussion that Mr. Nord just mentioned. We would be in favor of one more residential unit. There has been previous discussion prior to that of multiple units there. That's what we would just want to make sure that there's only one residential allowance there, so. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. All right, anybody else in favor of the application? Seeing none, anybody in opposition of the application? Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public comments, and I'll ask for a motion from the commission.
To offer a motion for discussion, I'll move to approve.
I will second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's have a discussion. Who's first?
Well, I'm in a pretty unique position here since I'm on the Harrisburg Planning and Zoning, so I can tell you that, yes, we are getting plans. We're going out there, and we're going out there quickly. And I was obviously in the meeting where Mark was there and spoke with Michael and the powers to be there in Harrisburg, and they don't have any issues with him building one more house there. And speaking with his neighbor saying that, normally with it being ag, I would absolutely say no, I don't want to go into residential, because that was one of our things that we've all discussed. We don't want to take from ag to, away from ag. However, even though he knew he was giving away his housing eligibility, I'm kind of up in the air right now. I'm in a unique position right now, knowing that Harrisburg is we're going out there, and we're going out there quickly. And I know that that would be right for that area. That would be, instead of multi-housing there, that would be perfect for that area, so.
My thoughts, Mr. Chairman, is on the surface, it does not look like it's a significant disruption of what's going on in that area. The unique part of this, though, is this is not unique to the county. We have a lot of these circumstances. And I get concerned that, and you brought some very good points up on Tower Estates. I did not support those because this is what causes, there's other ones just like this. And how far and how many do we allow to happen? You know, they sat with 10 acres, they decided to sell off their house with 5 of the acres, leaving the remainder of those 5 acres to do something when it was, in all essence, when this was a 1/40 and they gave the eligibilities, that was what was available. This is rezoning 101, and it's on top of that, it's spot zoning. I didn't support Tower Estates. I won't be able to support this because it does snowball under other properties that are going to be very similar to this as well. I think the fortunate thing for this property is close to the city of Harrisburg, and they're going to be able to assist in not too far a future of giving the ability to build a home on that property. But just because of the complexity of northern Lincoln County and the whole county, this is not unique. And we're going to see more and more of these. And if we don't finally say, you know, this isn't the right thing to do because it is spot zoning, we're going to have it more and more. And again, I don't condemn anybody for saying looks like the right thing to do, because on the surface, it does look like the right thing to do.
Thank you. Other commissioners?
So this is Eric. You guys hear me okay? You're great.
Yes, we can hear you, Scott.
Okay. I have to agree with your boss there. I mean, you know, I'm home there looking at the map, and it just looks like it makes sense when you're from above. At the same time, we splitting housing eligibilities and owning things so that we can have just one more house. So just one more house, and I just think it's a scary precedence all over the county. You know, we stop and especially with Harrisburg and these comments. I mean, that just, you know, this is what we were talking about earlier, where we're 10 years out. We're that far out from Harrisburg, these folks out with this deal. I just personally, I don't know if we open that bar where it would end as far as splitting housing out. It's really scary to me, and why I don't support this.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, one other comment, and Mrs. Hogan, you would be able to comment on this. It's a 6-acre parcel. I would have to review. You know, we don't have, as a county, the jurisdiction as to the plating of it, so it would fall to the municipality in this circumstance, closest, which would be Harrisburg. So theoretically, it still could get subdivided. So I know there was a concern about, so once we've rezoned it, we've then don't have control of exactly what it'll be. We don't have a site plan, we don't have plating, we don't have any of those types of measures on that. And I understand every intention can be, it's one home today, but just like when we're talking about rezoning a property commercial, what they say they may do today is not maybe what they're gonna do tomorrow or 10 years from now, so. But anyway, the final comment. Again, it, on the surface, looks like a great thing to do, but it's very slippery slope that we have to face on all of these. Thank you.
And I think Commissioner Poppins hit every point I was going to say too. I mean, it looks like a great place. I've been by there. The neighborhoods are great. It is great, and I fully believe your intention is sincere. But once we rezone it rural residential, I know it's not your intention, but you could sell it to somebody else and they put 12 houses out there, or this could happen, or 5 years down the road, something else could happen. So, yeah, I'm going to not support it, and I'll let the city of Harrisburg make that decision when they annex that in, and they can control their growth and how they like to see it. So with that, I will ask for a roll call. Commissioner, so the motion is to approve, so no is to not rezone it rural residential and leave it ag. Yes is to rezone it rural residential. So Commissioner Instead,
Yes.
Commissioner Hogan,
I'm gonna say no.
Commissioner Johnson,
No.
Commissioner Scott,
No.
Commissioner Poppins,
No.
and I am also no. Commissioner Jungling. All right. Mr. Brown, item number 3. I'm sorry, I just clarify that, that did fail. I gotta say that for the record, so, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this next application, the applicant owner is LG Everest. Location is about 3/4 of a mile from the City of T corporate limits. Subject parcel or parcels in this case, there's 3 parcels that are associated with this application. They total approximately 13.58 acres. As you can see, the current zoning of the parcels, 2 of them are zoned commercial, 1 of them is zoned light industrial. The light industrial property is developed with a cement operation. The 2 properties to the north were developed with commercial type uses. Another little bit of history on this too is that prior to 2009, Lincoln County had one industrial district. In 2009, they established a light industrial and a heavy industrial district. At that time, the staff at that time went through and looked at all the properties and designated them. On this particular property, they designated as I-1. And then this, which was an existing developed parcel. And then these parcels, of course, were already zoned commercial. This property was also rezoned to industrial. It was zoned commercial at one time. Parcels are all developed. There is structures on all 3 parcels. Parcels to directly across the road are like zoned commercial and developed for commercial type uses. There is other types of uses in here that I would say would borderline commercial type uses. Some existing uses are industrial type uses there. These are some photos that staff took of the site. This would be from what I would call probably the center of the property. So you can see there is some buildings and development on the property. And this, so the purpose of this application is the owner intends to combine all 3 parcels into 1 parcel. And then what I'll say is expand really the use that's occurring there. So I'll get to a later slide that'll show the build out or development of the property. But when I was visiting with the applicant, the applicant's representatives, we really talked about is how do we formulate all of the existing uses that are going on the site and all of the proposed ones that we have on the site. And so this really fit what the requirement is for a planned development district. A planned development district, we're looking at types of uses, combining them all, but then also looking at is it how do we facilitate existing zoning and those different types of things on the property. So really the application is to build additional structures on the adjacent properties, continue to operate this the existing operation on the property. Get back to here once. So staff did work with the applicant and we drafted an ordinance. And the ordinance, again, a planned development is not a conventional zoning district, so it's not a straight rezone to commercial or industrial uses. It's essentially a creation of a new district. And so this would be the LG Everest Ace Ready Mixed Plan Development District. The uses that would be permitted would be a wet and dry ready mix concrete plant, a hot mix asphalt plant, a contractor shop, truck repair shop, general maintenance facilities. And then all those uses that are permitted special and conditional use in the I-2 zoning district. So these are the uses that they prescribed to identify, but then to allow us flexibility to say that any of those other types of uses in the I-2 zoning district. Accessory uses would be those that are accessory to any of those uses that are permitted in the district. Parking regulations would be governed by the I-2 district. Sign regulations governed by the I-2 district. Density would follow the requirements of the I-2 zoning district, except the maximum height would be increased to 110 feet. So they are proposing a new structure on the site that would exceed, I believe, 100 feet. But I'll let them explain a little bit more of that. And then there are some other regulations that we've attached. So essentially, you're establishing regulations like you would on a conditional use permit for those uses within there. And so these are some of the things that we previously discussed with the applicant's representatives, these items here. And I won't go through all of them, but they were in your staff report and your packet. So essentially, these are just regulatory items associated with the prescribed uses in the district. I'll click off of there. Back here. And so this was it's labeled as a final development plan, but I talked with the applicant's representatives and really going to treat this as an initial development plan. So plan development requires that you submit an initial development plan and an application for a rezone, but you can also submit a final development plan. So a little uniqueness to this is that our comprehensive plan identifies this as a rural commercial industrial area. So I'll get back to what staff's finding is, but in the meantime, since we've adopted our comprehensive plan, the City of T has developed a comprehensive plan that establishes this area, the Smiths Industrial Park, as a growth area and their platting jurisdiction. So the City of T has the authority to approve the subdivision plan for this property. And the City of T is in the process of doing that. The last talk I had with them is they have everything they need as far as submittal. The City of T just requires that be approved by the Planning Commission and the City Council, and that just hasn't proceeded yet. And so what I've told the applicant's representatives is that we'll hold off on final development plan, and that'll actually come back to you. So if the rezoning is approved by you and the County Board of Commissioners, they will come back to you at a later date with a final development plan, which will look a lot like this, and it'll look a lot like a preliminary subdivision plan. But at that time, I'll be able to say the City of T's approved this. But I can't say that tonight. So it's really, we're treating this as an initial development plan. But also at that time, we'll get past all of the mechanics of everything. Because conceptually, what you're looking at now, do we want to rezone this to a planned development? Do we want the ordinance to look like that? But when it comes to the final development plan, and I'll get to that, you're really looking at is what does this look like? And how do we want this to look like? And so you'll still have an ability to come back and do that. And this is really what it'll look like at that stage. So this is the existing facility here, and then the rest of this will be built out of what it is there. And I won't go into detail, I'll let the applicant do that. But what I'll tell you is that the staff report and the staff finding is that this application is consistent with our comprehensive plan, which identifies this as a rural commercial area. And within the rural commercial area, we identified these types of uses that would be allowed within it. And it is in conformance with adjacent land uses. We also did, and I could save it for the support, but we did get a letter of support from the landowner to the east of the property. And I'll read that into the record at some time when you call for affirmative or people in favor of the application. But with that, again, staff's finding is that this application is consistent with the comprehensive plan. With that, I'd be happy to answer your questions that you have for staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
I have one question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Bob.
Does this plan development have any effect on Ironworks Avenue?
No, but as you're aware, as the state is investigating the overpass in that area.
Correct. That's why I was curious if there was any, because the property would be owned till the middle of the road.
Correct.
Is it not? And I was just curious if the road was included in it, and there's no, and maybe they'll address that, but at this point, you have not been presented with anything that addresses improvement or condition of that road.
So I'll correct that a little bit. So the property is not part of the road. The road was dedicated to public use.
It
It's a
has, that
separate
is
parcel-
separate.
Separate parcel.
Okay.
And so the road's not improved, as you know, it's a gravel type road.
So then can you clarify who has ownership of that road?
I cannot clarify that.
Okay.
I'm working with legal counsel on direction of the state on that question.
Very good, thank you.
Yep.
Other commissioners, questions of staff? I'm not sure if this will be for the owner or not, but Mr. Brown, is there, what do they have in there for as far as wastewater runoff from this future potential development and all that? Is there, that's probably a question for this team over here, so I'll just hold on that one,
Yeah,
unless you had something to throw out there.
I would defer to them on
Okay,
that one.
thank you. All right, if there's no other questions.
And just to be clear, so this is the initial plan, and we'll get to look at the final plan for approval, or, so when we vote tonight, we vote to keep developing the plan, and then it will come back to us, is that correct?
So a plan development is what you didn't get in the first two applications, which is they got to tell us essentially what they're doing with the plan. But there's two parts to that. So the initial development plan is what I'll really call just kind of a general, of this. The final development plan is going to show us heights. It'll show us setbacks. It'll show us, buffering, screening, all of those different types of things that might be of a concern to you. At this stage, it's just like the first two applications. Are you supportive of the rezone concept of it? And then the initial development plan, yes, it generally meets the requirements for submittal. The final development plan is going to get more into drainage and grading and all of those things that we typically get caught in.
Mr.
So.
Chairman, I have a question then to follow up on that.
Did you get yours, Commissioner Johnson?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
So clarification then, who
Okay.
has approval for that final plan? Is it the municipality of T or the county?
The County Planning Commission. It does not go to the County Board of Commissioners, so the final plan will come back to the
Okay,
Planning Commission.
very good,
Yeah.
thank you, Toby.
Yep.
All right, Commissioners, any further questions for staff? Seeing none, I will ask the applicant or representative to come forward and talk about the application, please.
Need that work, Toby, to hand that up, that'll be fine. Hello, Commissioners, Guard Rops with Stockwell Engineers, 2201 Edgewood Road, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Is that on?
Yeah, it's on it, just.
You're tall.
Yeah, you're tall. I've watched these in the afternoon before and tried to watch myself. And yeah, sometimes it does get pretty faint in the microphone, so I'm trying to so it can be recorded officially.
Should I repeat that? Guard Rops, Stockwell Engineers, 2201 Edgewood Road, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We are representing LG Everest, Lance Pullman, and Denny Fields are here in attendance from them, so they can answer any questions that you might have directly to them. Toby pretty much covered everything that we were looking at doing out here. Currently, LG Everest owns and operates here on Tract 1 their existing ACE Ready Mix plant. They're looking at expanding to the north. They have purchased Lot 5A and Tract 5, so 1, 5A, and 5 have been purchased, and that's what we're looking at doing, at consolidating and turning that into, replatting that into one parcel, which will be Tract 6 of Smith Addition. Currently, right now, in the existing 5A, there was businesses, like Toby had mentioned before, Tract 5 had a business, Tract 5A had a business, they are now gone. In 5A, it was a small maintenance shop, repair. That building will be removed as part of the future improvements, that site regraded. And then to the north on Tract 5 is an existing building that was used for truck accessories, truck repair, storage, and that's going to remain in place, and they'll utilize that kind of for the similar situation that they were using before previously. So, and we'll get to that when I get to the kind of the improvements on that. So the plan is, right now, as Toby had mentioned, to replat this property
into one parcel and add the three, so you have tract 1, 5A and 8 into one tract 6, which will include the full 13.58 acres or so. That has been submitted to the city of T. Engineering has reviewed that, have approved it for the commission, but the commission hasn't, planning and zoning hasn't, I believe, approved that yet, but it's been approved by their engineer at this point. And I think that might be either on this meeting, this coming up meeting, which I think was this week, or maybe potentially the next month, but that's where that is at right now. So they are looking forward to doing, replatting the property. As Toby had mentioned, it's commercial. They had conditional use permits on all three, so it's easier to just zone this into this PUD for this tract 6 when it's all replatted. The improvements, kind of flip this counterclockwise here. Right here is the existing facility. That's Ace Ready Mix site right now. Then the plan is to expand that to the north. Directly to the north, they'll be expanding the pavement. You can kind of see that in light gray. The coarse aggregate and fine aggregate will be located right here in the red hatched area. Sandwiching that would be a new wet plant that would be going right here. You can kind of see the footprint. It's smaller than the existing facility, but that will be fully enclosed. That's where the height restriction kind of comes in, that they kind of need to get included on this rezone, because that will be roughly about 100 feet or so in height. Exactly which plant that will be right now is not known, but the 110 would cover any plant that they would propose to put here at that location. So that will be utilized. The rock piles in between will be utilized to feed both plants. Just to the bottom there to the west, there's a couple of material storage bins that will be enclosed, not from the top or the sides, but the sides will have walls that will enclose any specialty aggregates that they will need for certain specialty mixes on site. There is an existing concrete washout area right here that will get removed and replaced with a larger concrete washout facility for the ready mix trucks that come on site and clean those out. That will be recirculated water and recycled to be reused to wash out the trucks as they come in. The plan is too that during operations, they're going to be bringing in some extra concrete from removals of other sites. That will be crushed on site, so kind of in a placeholder right here is a recycled concrete area. So that's where their recycled concrete will be crushed and stockpiled. There's an existing utility easement right in through here, overhead power. Obviously, we maintain to try to stay out of that with any structures, including the concrete washout area and the wet plant, so that's kind of restricted the site a little bit from what we can do. But we think there is enough room in there to place this and where we have that shown. The existing building right here, you can see that's there. That's the one building that will be removed. And then this site regraded for that new wet plant and washout facility. To the north of that, which was tract 5 currently, the existing building is right here. That's going to remain. They're going to be utilizing that as office space, dispatch, truck repairs, truck storage, whatnot. So that will remain. The site itself really isn't going to change a whole lot. The fencing around the perimeter is going to stay. The existing grading isn't going to change a whole lot for the existing parking, gravel parking that's out there. They'll utilize this very north end to be their ready-mix truck parking. They'll have power outlets at each location to plug in the trucks if need be. And then there'll be some parking right next to the existing building there to the north. That will be for staff and for employees. And right down in here, you can kind of get the drainage to come down along this backside in the low-lying area. That's going to be where we'll be planning on the detention pond for the site. We've notified the adjacent property owners, specifically more here in the Smith's addition. Everything you can see highlighted in blue right here is tract 1, 5, and 5A, so this is the existing site. We've notified everybody in blue and had a public open house on that, just to let everybody know what's going on and let them kind of ask any questions that they might have. We did have a good turnout of that. A couple of pictures here on, we had that at the existing site out there on the very north end, that existing building that's gonna remain. That's where that was held. Was no opposition to it. Everybody was certainly in favor with it. You know, Ready Mix has been a very good neighbor to the businesses adjacent to it, and they just feel an expansion of that, and including to remain as Ace Ready Mix obviously would be a benefit to them too. So they had no opposition. Everything went well at the open house there. So I guess with that, if you have any questions, we can answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Robs. Commissioners, any questions for the owner or the representative?
I have one or two, but I don't want to hog the mic if anybody else wants it first. Mr. Robs, hey, could you pull up the preliminary plan, if you could? There's a road access currently along the interstate. Will that be maintained, or is that going to get eliminated partially? Could you?
That will not be, as far as my understanding is, I think that's gonna be going away. Will not be needing to utilize that.
And I didn't know if that was a dedicated right of way or if that's an issue.
That's all state right away down in through there.
That was acquired in that, during that, 20 years ago when they had to have that. Okay, that handles that question,
That's
thank
that
you.
road you're talking right
Yeah,
here, right? Yep.
so the state actually owns that now?
Yes, this
Oh,
is
perfect.
right away right here. This H lot, there was an H lot, and that doesn't show, but this piece right here, this triangle piece, that is an H lot that the state purchased.
So
I don't
that
know
eliminated
exactly
that
when that was
access,
ago.
perfect, that
Yeah.
answers that question.
Yep.
Second question I have for you is the proposed tower of 100 or 110 feet. Has that been run past the FAA as concerning the airport at the T exit, if there's going to be any interference with that?
We're in the process of getting that reviewed.
And when you do that, there's also the current situation, and then there's the proposed aviation easements that we've got going on there, that we would need to make sure it not only meets the current, but what is planned for the instant approach.
Yes.
So, okay,
Yep.
very good. So you're aware of that. Thank you for that. That was my only two questions at this time.
Those are good questions. All right, commissioners, any further questions of
Yeah, I just got a
Mr. Robs?
couple of questions. So on the ordinance, it said about an asphalt plant. Is that anywhere on here, or is that something that you can potentially add in the future?
It is, Lance, I don't know if you can speak in that a little bit.
My name is Denny Fields. I'm with LG Everest. I'm at 350 South Main, Sioux Falls. We wanted to get an asphalt plant in here, but it's going to be very tight, and it's very restrictive as to what we have for all the materials and all the stockpile in there. So at this present time, we do not have the asphalt plant planned to go on in here, and we're only going to go in with the concrete. But if we don't get the concrete on in there, we'd like to be able to have the option to put the asphalt plant in there if we don't do the concrete.
So you plan on utilizing both plants, or will you discontinue using the current existing?
Correct, and Mr. Brown asked what a wet and dry plant was. One is a dry plant, one is a wet plant. So the wet plant basically has a drum on the plant, and it mixes the material introduced on the plant, and then it's dumped into the truck wet. So it's a more consistent, it's a faster batch. On a summer day, you want to use the wet batch because you can do higher volume and you can get it out to customers with a consistent batch. On the dry batch, it's introduced into the truck dry, and you introduce all the components in the water into the truck, and the truck does the mixing. So it's a little bit slower. We have to be a little bit more careful on making sure the mix is consistent going out from one batch to the next. So what we do in our business plan is, in the summer, we like to use the wet batch for the high volume days, and a little bit more, there's more cleanup and stuff like that. And then in the wintertime, we do the dry batch, is how we do it. And then we're repairing the wet batch.
And then with the concrete recycling area, you said that it's gonna be ground up. And I know we've had that issue come up in the past where it creates a lot of dust, and is there any plans to you know, depending on which way the wind's blowing, or that could blow onto the interstate and cause, you know, visibility issues. Is that something that, that needs to be looked at, or how often does that get crushed and that kind of stuff?
I would clarify one thing that Guard said there on that, and I'm gonna change it, what we're gonna do. Our plan is to stockpile that concrete there and then haul it off-site at this here time. So our plan to recycle at this location is too small and too small of an envelope to get the crush in, to get the stockpiles and do that. We have a yard down on Rice Street, so what we would do is when we have concrete that comes back, we dump it over there in a pile, the loader kind of puts it on up there, it's wet, and then we break it up hard and we'll put it into the trucks, haul it over to Rice Street, and then we'll do the crushing over there.
Okay, I was just concerned with, you know, it causing dust and potential accidents on that stretch of roads.
It is, yeah, it is crushed locally right there right now and has been for quite a few years before we purchased this property. So it's not too far. A neighbor right down the road is doing it. So it is being done right there. And you can do it to where it controls the dust and you can control the pile. And we've got all kinds of systems that we can plug in there to make sure that we're not going to interfere with any kind of dusting across the interstate.
That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Other commissioners, questions for the team applicant? All right, the only, oh,
Again, I don't wanna.
no, jump in, please.
One of the questions is, I asked Toby about the ironworks. Can anybody give me an update of how? That process is coming, working with the state and the other property owners at all at this point? Because it is an issue that has to get resolved.
Lance has been attending those meetings. I'll let him come up and introduce it and take that one.
Hi, my name is Lance Pullman. I'm the engineering manager for LG Everest. My address is 350 South Main in Sioux Falls. As far as the road agreement or road uses, nobody seems to really know.
I won't disagree with you at all on that.
So I've been attending the state informational meetings regarding the interchange, and I've also developed some friendships with the local neighbors, trying to figure out what is going on, what the plan is, and it's up in the air. And to be honest,
I think it comes down to nobody knows, nobody's willing to make the decision. So I'm not sure as a commissioner, myself, if we're gonna have to step in and try to, I know the state would have asked when in those meetings, you know, if we're willing to try to participate in trying to be the catalyst for it. But we do need to work together on getting this resolved. What I'm looking for is just a verbal, at this point, agreement that we're going to work together to try to get that done, because however it happened, nobody seems to know who has control over this road, or roads. It's not just this one.
absolutely, I would agree with you on that. And it's in our best interest, and it's it's our
It's
neighbors'
everybody's best interest. And, you know, it used to be, you know, this was owned for many years from Doug Lunn or somebody, and they just did it, you know? And that's what they did 30 years ago.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's not 30 years ago, it's today, and we have different property owners, you know, whether they own it, rent it, whatever, we just can't do it that way. So, given the significant change that we're doing, those are the catalysts that really get us to take a look at some of these issues. And again, I just wanted to make sure that we're willing to, you know, someone's gonna have to foot a bill somewhere. I don't know who it is, but someone's gonna have to eventually transfer the ownership and responsibility for this road. Second question, if I may.
Sure.
So when the plant was initially proposed, there was quite a bit of discussion at the time, because it was pretty, there was some debate on whether or not it should have been approved at that time. As you can see from the photos, there's trees surrounding that property. Can you describe any landscaping, and I'm not a favor of that, but it was part of the original agreement. Is there any intent to try to soften the impact to adjacent properties by landscaping or something else like that.
You know, we've discussed things, and some of the existing landscaping, see, I got a point down here. So like the south berm here, and some of these, this is gonna stay. Obviously, this is in the way of development. As far as planting trees and creating some, you know, green space, if you will, that's kind of our intention of this area down here, to create, not necessarily a buffer, but to make it more
It's-
inviting.
Yep. And I bring that up because I do remember when it was proposed, the initial cement plant, it was a lot of discussion at that time, and I think it was an instrumental part of that getting approved at that time. So I'd hate to lose it completely because of the reason why we're here today is it did get approved under those pretense. So if you can, in your next plan, maybe be a little more detailed on what those intentions are, so.
Sure. Another thing to mention too on here that I failed to mention, with this development, this expansion to the north here, we'll be consolidating some of these exits. Obviously, each parcel had a couple of entrances themselves. Exit number 1 here is an existing exit, that's gonna stay, nothing's gonna change there. Exit number 2, there is an exit right here right now, it's just getting expanded just a little bit to the south to make that wider. This one right here will go away, there's one right here that will go away, and another one right here that will go away, and a third entrance added right here that kind of accesses this north part for truck traffic and vehicle traffic. But it also lines up with an existing right-of-way easement that's kind of, not easement, but right-of-way that's platted at least as right-of-way across from it. That was kind of some of the options that the state's throwing around here with this intersection change and
Yeah.
providing access to this.
Yeah, by the way, good luck with working with them to get
I
all
know,
that
well,
figured out.
they have brought it up and it's potentially an option, but anyway, it does line up nicely with that if that's the case, that this road eventually maybe goes in someday, so.
And I guess, just to add one more thing to that too, we look very hard at our truck patterns and our truck traffic. Obviously, we have aggregate trucks coming in and out, as well as the concrete trucks. And, as far as the plan, we tried to develop a one-way, traffic flow pattern, and to reduce conflicts, turning conflicts, things of that nature, so.
Yeah, the majority will enter here and come through the plant this way or around
Correct.
here.
And unless you have heard something from the state hasn't made up their mind on how they're gonna work all
guess
the
is
magic,
as-
yeah,
your guess
so.
is as good as
Which is unfortunate because it does make an impact to how things will flow for you as well as other traffic in the area, so.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I just did have the one question because I deal with it when we work together. The city garden is, you know, and what do you use for water? Is there a lot of water, wastewater? Where does that all go when you develop your project?
Currently, the existing plant has a septic system on it. I think all 3 facilities do. This one will obviously get removed. The existing one's gonna stay. There's a septic tank. There's no drain field or anything. It's just a septic tank, a holding tank that they just have to pump out every so often. The wet plant will have its own as well. We'll locate that just off to the side. If there ever is any sewer that comes out here, they can just remove those and connect to those. Water usage, there's rural water running down Ironworks right now. We are proposing a couple of water lines coming out to fill up some trucks, a couple of different locations in here. That will be tapped into the existing rural water. There is well water as well. There's an existing well, I think, right in here. That will be utilized and come to the wet plant as well. It kind of feeds the dry one too, I believe, and will feed the wet plant. But the domestic, I guess if you will, from the rural water would be just kind of these yard hydrants essentially that will be used, I think like here and here. There might be another one that we're showing to put in there. Those would be supplied by the rural water line.
So, but making the product, there's not a lot of, you know, like other plants, there's not a lot of water that's used and then discharged off or anything like that for your product that you produce.
I'll take that one. Denny Fields, once again, 350 South Main. We wash out the trucks and the wet batch plant on a nightly basis. So we introduce so much water into that truck and then we let that spin and then we discharge that. The one facility right here, this is a washout bay, that is what that's used for. So that will have, it will dump into one side is what it will do, and then it will let it settle on out. And it will have some slopes, and we'll go in and we'll clean that on out on a daily basis. It will leave a paste behind, is what it will do. And then we'll put that in the recycled concrete. We'll have that hauled off, is what we do with that material. And on the wet batch drum, that's another thing. We wash that out on a nightly basis, dump that in the trucks, and the trucks will come on out and put that in this facility over here. So this is a facility that's commonly used nationally for ready-mix companies to take care of their washout water they have. So it's a self-contained system. It doesn't get out into the surface and come on into the detention pond. It's a contained system.
Gotcha, yep, that's what I was asking. Oh, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, one last question, I promise.
Yes.
Can you give us an idea in capacity compared to current operations? Is this site going to be able to do 50% more, 100% more, or 0% more? What is the intention of the site in volume, just so we have an idea on amount of trucks and traffic moving through in and out of this area? Thank you.
Tough question, depending on market conditions, is be my answer on that. The capacity with this wet plant and this dry plant will be able to increase by 50%.
All right, Commissioners, any additional questions of the applicants? Seeing none, thank you, guys. All right, at this time, I will ask anybody in favor of the application to come forward and speak, please.
Mr. Chairman, I did get an email if you want me to read that into the record.
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, so this is Lonnie Heibolt. He owns Traffic Solutions, or runs Traffic Solutions, 27297 Kenworth Place. I own the property next to LG Everest Inc. As a neighbor, I fully support their request to rezone for their new uses. That's period. So.
All right, nice, short, to the point.
Short and sweet.
Good letter. All right, so anybody in favor of the applicant? Seeing none, anybody in opposition of the application?
Don't get nervous. I'm not against the plan. I think what you've done is really good. However, along with this application was the ordinance amending this. And it does say, in this, resolution that you're trying to, the ordinance amending, it does say on this,
Excuse me,
oh, I'm sorry, Betty
we have
Otten, 46787 273rd Street in T.
thank you.
So, my biggest concern is the concrete crushing, because, just 3 weeks ago, the commission stopped that, the other gentleman, I think that you were referring to, just across the interstate from crushing. He's not supposed to be crushing anymore. And this ordinance amending it in 6F says return concrete may be placed on site, allowed to cure, and crushed. And I know you say that you're not going to crush concrete right now, so, but I think that should be amended, that they can't crush concrete, because the reason that 3 weeks ago we finally got that stopped too is crushing concrete, and I had talked to Toby several times about it. There's nowhere in Lincoln County in the zoning ordinance that allows for crushed concrete anywhere. And so this is kind of looks like a backdoor way to get this into planning and zoning ordinances, and I don't think that's the way to do this. So, I mean, I love your plan. It looks great. I just don't think that we need concrete crushing, and especially doing it in a backdoor ordinance amending this the way that it's being done. And I also attached some sheets on the back that crushed concrete is really silica and it's a cancer-causing agent. And when, especially the one that was across the road, across the interstate, that had dust everywhere. And with our South Dakota winds, I think our winds tonight were like 39 miles an hour. It's like you can't contain that dust. So even though you say that it's just a holding facility right now for that recycled concrete, this ordinance amending it actually states that you can later on crush it. So maybe that's a good place just to put your asphalt and get rid of the concrete crushing. So thank you for your consideration with that.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else in opposition of the application? Seeing none, I will close the floor to public comment, and I will ask commission for a motion for discussion.
Not trying to get us out any quicker, but just to keep it moving, I'll offer a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's have a discussion.
So Toby, what do we have to say about that then? For this, we not having that for crushed concrete, and then we're going to allow it here.
Well, I guess a couple things is I think it would be good to ask the applicant. I think that what this was really talking about was return trucks, when they clean them out, that portion they would cure it. And then I don't know if they fully crush it on the site or if they just partially crush it to get it onto the trucks to take it to Rice Street. But that would be a question for the applicant. And I guess in saying that, nothing meant to backdoor. I mean, if you guys do not desire that, that's like I mentioned in the staff analysis, tonight's the time you can take that out. You can say that we're not going to allow that on site. But I would defer to the applicant to have them kind of discuss with you what the purpose, need of that item is.
Okay, yeah, would you guys answer that question, please?
We would fully agree of having this a non-crushing concrete site, if that's what you want and the public wants. Because there's really no room to do the crushing that is required to what we're saying. This room is too tight. And, we just wanted to, if it was written in there that way. So if you want to remove the crushing, we have no problem with that. Our intention is not to have crushing. So if you want to remove the language.
Is there a technical or industry term? I mean, I've poured enough concrete to know that when you wash out your trucks, there can be big piles of concrete. So, I mean, can we, would you refer to that as breaking concrete? I mean, because, I get what you're saying. You're trying to make it into smaller pieces so you can haul it away, whereas crushed concrete is obviously like gravel. Right?
Correct.
So what would be the proper term if we had to get into the nuts and bolts of the?
We will need an area to dispose of the concrete that comes back in a truck. So if you're a person that's pouring concrete and you ordered 7 yards and you only use 6, we get 1 yard back. So that has come back and that's poured in this recycled concrete area. We'll have that concreted, they'll pour that there, and then it will harden.
Right.
The loader will come back, when it's in its pliable state, he will stir that. It's not a crushing process. It's just making sure that we don't get big chunks, big pieces. So that will break it up. This is really common in the industry. So then when that's done, then that's able to load that into a truck, take it down to Rice Street and recycle it down there in our recycle yard down there.
And that's all daily, weekly?
On a as-needed basis.
Okay.
We will have the concrete, the aggregate trucks that will be hauling on in. So they'll be hauling on in, and then we'll have them haul it on out. So when it gets too big, we'll do that. And then the same thing that the paste that you get out of the washout facility, the paste that you get from there will be put in there and hauled off on that also.
So that yard of concrete that's returned, unlike when I pour it at my house and have it dumped off, you guys are making it easy to handle when you, well, it's still,
That would be a good way of handling. We're trying to make it handleable in the loader and handleable in the trucks.
while it's still wet
Pliable.
or pliable,
Wet,
so it's
yeah.
not making dust.
Correct, correct. So that's how we'll do that, and then we'll haul it away. So if you want it to be a non-crushing facility, that would be bringing in a crusher, conveyors, taking those big chunks, and then you would be making it into a 3/4 inch down product, which is used on that.
So maybe instead of crushing, we could use the word transportation ready, or something like that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may comment
Yes.
on what was presented here. The rezone that got denied was a split vote. On the property, there had been doing some crushing, but that actually was not the action that was taken that day. That was a rezoning request, just for their information. And I do believe that the topic of crushing came up because of it's going on there. And I believe some of the animosity that is there is because of the proximity of homes considerably closer than there is on this circumstance. I do appreciate your willingness to remove it. I still have yet to read anything that is clarifying that crushed concrete is a known. You go to California and you drive a car, you have a sticker on about everything there is that says it may cause cancer. And I love joking with my daughter out there. It's like, hey, what did you touch today? Because I'm sure it caused cancer. Because they literally put it on everything just to write it off as a risk factor. It's part of our doing business. Where's the right location? If this isn't the right location, I don't know where it would be. It's a concrete facility. It creates some dust no matter what. It would be a known spot for this type of activity to go on. So I'd urge us not to get overzealous in trying to restrict this because it may become something that they need to do. And as our economy needs to continue to grow, it is part of our factor of how to process the leftover or the residual from these plants. I agree that if this will never be a large crushing facility. It's not a big enough parcel.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I want to be very cautious that we're not on a slippery slope if we're intending of trying to approve this, that we write some language in here that literally could kill this thing for something that is very insignificant and part of its operation is just the fact that actually manufacturing concrete, it'll create the same type of product as crushing the concrete will do. So
It's industry's purpose of trying to recycle this and use it for future building and not be going after the raw materials that we do on all of our other locations. So that's the purpose of it. Good?
Thank you. Commissioners, any further questions or continued discussion?
Yeah, there's a little bit of discussion here, because if they're not going to crush the concrete, what does it matter if we put that in there? If we put that stipulation just,
it's just that I would say that we need to be very cautious how we word it, because it could come back and say, if we're worded improperly, it could be said, we're not crushing concrete. But the fear factor of them dropping concrete out of a truck and taking an excavator and moving it, that will crumble it, that could be crushing. I just want to make sure that we don't word it improperly.
okay.
And I'm very fine, they've said they're willing, and I agree that this site is not going to be a full-fledged crushing operation. But we did have an operation that sits on, Toby, correct me, that we did the rezone, that was 2 acres. You can have an operation, it's just the scale of the operation that I need to be. And again, I've tried to browse through what was presented here tonight. It says possibly. There's a lot of things that are possible. I have not had anybody tell me that it has 100% causes cancer, and pretty much everything in our lives nowadays. We're facing COVID, we're facing everything else under the sun. There's risks out there for everything. My point being is a viable economic resource that we need to do for our economy to continue to grow.
All right, commissioners, any additional conversation?
I think from what we've seen, being this is a initial draft, right? Toby, there will be a final one. But yeah, I think we've seen enough to move ahead.
All right. Unless there any additional conversation, we have a motion to approve, and a motion and a second to approve it as is. If that's all right with everyone, I'll do roll call for this. So again, yes vote is to approve the rezone, and no vote is to not allow it. Commissioner Instead,
Yes.
Commissioner Hogan,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yeah.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
And Commissioner Jungley is also a yes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, with that, Mr. Brown, we are on to new business.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just put this as an agenda item on here primarily just so that I could put all the slides that we presented at the last meeting on there. I won't go through all of those. I guess just wanted an open discussion with the board of kind of what their conclusions are from that meeting, and if they had any questions or comments associated with it, so.
I really appreciate everybody getting together and I like the path forward as that we talked about that night.
So just on the phone, yeah, I think that was really good and presented, and I appreciate you putting it together. But on some of those topics about specifically acreage and things like that, I mean, mostly go for plan there, or what we do.
So, yes, Commissioner, so I did put the work plan on the screen now. So really kind of the next steps is we talked about some kind of ordinance amendments that we would like to at least discuss, I guess, moving forward. And I know one of them would be building eligibilities, transferability, and those different types of things. So I guess moving forward, we would just put work session to talk about various topics. The one that I would like to dedicate some time to would be the subdivision regulations. As you're aware, the County Board of Commissioners did adopt a master drainage plan last year. And as part of that, one of the things that was a goal in there was to look at the regulations that we have in place. And so really quickly, I won't get into full depth into this, but one of the concerns that I have as staff is that what we always have is that we get a preliminary plan application with the rezone, and then the questions come up, what about detention, and what about drainage? And then, I constantly say, well, that's going to be at a later date with the final development plans. And so one of the thoughts that I've had is let's make it real. Let's put that stuff up at the beginning so that you guys have it too. It's going to require developers to spend more money on engineering and things like that, but I think the public demands it, and I think the boards are demanding it as well. So one of the first things I'd like to do is bring forward is just kind of for discussion a draft that would show you what that would look like. And then we would discuss it and then discuss it some more. And then eventually you would schedule a public hearing and then make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners for the changes that you would like to make. And that could go with anything with the building eligibility transfers or any other types of amendments that you might have. But I guess what I'd like to do is next month is schedule that, at least as a work session, to talk about amending that.
I'm for that. I think that's a good idea. Thanks for doing that.
Okay. And it looks like a heavier agenda next month too. So I think we do have 4 or 5 applications. So it'll be a long meeting on that part of it. But I think it's critical that we start moving forward with that. So that's kind of just my conclusion of that is that we should move forward with some of those, at least to discuss it and see where we're going with the different things.
Start with one and then move to another.
Yep. Yeah. And probably one leads to the other. We'll start talking about one. And I think, the other part of that too is it leads into the question that Commissioner Poppins asked in the previous application is who owns these roads or who takes care of these roads. That's something that we need to work on as far as approvals, is to make sure that there's homeowners associations or road districts or something in place as we establish these developments. So, and that's something that I think we can do better at in the future. But everything's moving so fast and there's so many moving parts to it that I think it just unfortunately got lost in the process of how that development got approved. So the second thing is, any other comments on that or conclusions on that? Okay. The other thing that I wanted to make mention of is that next month is your annual, organizational meeting. So per the bylaws, you guys choose a chair and vice chair for the meeting. There is no requirement of term limits or progression or anything like that within your bylaws. You're lucky you have those. Board of Commissioners does not have bylaws, but you have bylaws that establish the process for that. So next month you'll be voting. Your current chair is Commissioner Jongling, and I believe it's Scott is your vice chair on it. But there's no term limits on that, so you choose out of your establishment. The one thing I did want to talk about, though, is the bylaws allow the appointment of 2 alternates. And how we've always done the alternates is it's always the person, you have term limits, so you can serve no more than 2 terms. And how we've always established the alternates is that when those persons are off, then we have them serve as in a capacity of an alternate. And the problem is that the last 2 resignations we had, they resigned, and so they didn't fulfill their terms. And so our alternates have currently been alternates for, I believe, it's going on a number of years now. And I haven't talked to them. I intend to talk to them before the next meeting to see if they're still interested. Both of them have come to meetings that they needed to be. But there is a provision where you would just establish 2 alternates. So I just wanted to make note of that. But it's necessary because we are down 1 board member now as it is with some of those issues. So.
How is the search coming for that person? I mean, that person, I've been off, ever since I've been on the board, that person has not been on the, we've never had that district's.
It's in the hands of the commissioner for that territory.
Which commissioner is it?
It's District 5, I believe, if I'm correct. Yep.
Does he have anybody, does he have any leads or anybody that's come forward to show interest?
I can't speak to that. I've had discussions with him, yes.
If I may, Toby and Mr. Chairman, I think this will lead into something that I actually wanted to discuss last year, and it kind of morphed into something that it wasn't, and it got sidetracked. What I wanted to ask the board last year, and I'm going to ask it this year since I got reappointed, is do they appreciate the commissioner representative being an active voter and participating extensively in these discussions? Or would you prefer that position to be more of a reference tool for asking questions to when you're facing? My thought was, I think the weight of the Planning and Zoning Board is very instrumental in giving guidance to the commission. But at the same token, when you have a representative from the commission that's voting on it and then they're voting on it again, I thought at least it was a time to maybe have that conversation with this board and see if they had a preference. Again, I don't have a desire one way or the other. I just thought it's always been that way. We used to, I think, Toby, wasn't there used to be 2 commissioners years and years ago that would be on the planning and zoning, if I remember right, many years ago. I could be wrong. But, you were having redundancy in voting. But if there would ever be a discussion, wanted to pursue that, I would, encourage it. I don't want to manipulate as I feel sometimes I do. I would love just to be a resource, so you can maybe have a perspective of what the commission is thinking sometimes. But I'm at the will of this board, so.
I do see your point, but I think yourself or any other commissioner on the board is very valuable. Right now, I could go either way with that one, but yeah, I do feel the commissioner on the board is a super valuable part of of it, however we do the voting or not voting.
Again, like I was trying to say, I am very opinionated, and I'm very glad to share that, but I'm also ability to hold that back if it doesn't, I don't want it to interfere with your thought processes as you go through it, because it is extremely important, your decisions that this board makes. And I don't want it to be overshadowed by a commissioner, which is what I felt last year and wanted to bring it up, and that's what I wanted. This year I feel more comfortable going in and asking you about that. So that's my only thought, so.
I have actually questioned that from the time I started on here as to having a commissioner have a vote on this board and also having a vote when it comes to them also. I have questioned that. Often wondered if maybe the commissioner could be more of a reference point and then it maybe a tiebreaker vote, maybe if that would come to that. I just don't know that having a say on both boards like all the time. That was my thoughts. It's just been a thought.
Yeah, so if you can ponder that for next meeting, and if there's more discussion, you know, like I said, I've thought about it. I've served for the county for over 12 years now. I've served my first 3 years on the planning and zoning board, and enjoyed it very much. It was the most instrumental, quickly to learn about the county was serving on this board. And it's an extremely, I mean, this is by far what we deal with in this county all the time. Planning and zoning, planning and zoning, planning and zoning. And again, I'm glad to do what I do, absolutely. But again, I don't want to manipulate or overpower at times. I just want to make sure that I'm a reference if you want me to be a reference, but if you want me an active participant, glad to do that as well. So, but Lynn, I really yield to the majority of the board on that decision, so.
So I'll jump in once, just to make sure everybody understands, is that it's state law that requires us to have a commissioner on the planning commission. Yeah. That's unique from city statute, which does not require it. But it's in conformance with county statute, county law, that there be a representative on here. Where I think a question has come up, and I believe it comes up just who's ever chair is that, you notice with Sioux Falls, their chair never votes on items. He only or she only votes if there's a tie. And so one of the questions that we've always had is, should we set that up with our bylaws that the chair would be a non-voting member only in the event of a tie?
So would that be the chair or the representative from the commission? The commissioner.
I suppose we could do it, both ways that way. It seems cleaner to be the chair, but it could go both ways if we wanted to establish it that way.
But then would the commissioner be?
It would, again, you could still have me as a voting member. I have to serve on it, but I could be a non-voting member if I remember reading the bylaws correctly. And again, I'm willing to go to the commission and say, this is what this board wants to do. It's what I was willing to do last year. And again, this is an extremely important board. I want to make sure you guys are, everyone here is extremely supported in how they're doing their job. And again, sometimes it's very easy, because I sit in this as a commissioner, I sit in it as planning and zoning, that we're talking about roads. I'm literally, abreast of a lot more information, unfortunately, or fortunately. But sometimes it's very easy for me to just ramble. And I'm good with, believe it or not, sitting back and being quiet. And just be, hey, Poppins, what is this? Instead of just saying, okay, open it up, kind of a mic thing. So again, I'm good either way. It's just, I wanted to pose this last year. It got held off, and I decided to bring it forward here, especially with what the topic is here. So I think it's time. If we wanted to make a change, great. If we don't, if you're comfortable with how it's going, I'm good with that too. But I just definitely wanted to bring it up, so. But going back to the voting, if you're going to change your bylaws, you could have that person a non-voting member. You could have the chairman be the tiebreaker. You can still do that. I do support the chairman only being the tiebreaker. I think that's a good decision for this board. What complicates here is we're down a board member, and it does compound the issue. So,
And
you
that's,
know, maybe the situation is the representative from the commission is a voting member only if somebody's absent, or something like that, and becomes the alternate vote, and the chairman still gets to be the tiebreaker only. There's some things that we can manipulate, or adjust, but again, I feel personally that I would like to actually participate less in the general conversations and be more of a reference to this board than being a very strong voice. And sometimes I feel too strong, I have to admit, on some of these decisions, so.
I
would
just
say
want to
that-
learn from y'all, that's all.
I would say that's my only issue, whatever thought is too. There's some meetings that we have barely enough votes of the way we are. So that's one thing to remember too, like, if we manipulate it, let's think about that also. Maybe if we don't have enough members, the commissioner is a vote, or just think about that too. We gotta make sure we have enough people here. I mean, tonight we have plenty, but other meetings we've not.
I think it's a good,
This is Eric. I'm just listening. Hopefully you guys can hear me, but I think things the way we're doing is just fine, and I appreciate their Commissioner Poppins, their commissioners, gosh, that are on there, and they're in it. I don't feel like like big overburdens or anything like that. So I like commission representative to be a voting member and doing things as is. And as far as tiebreakers go at this point, I've been on has gotten a point where the tiebreaker yet. Not that it won't come, but I would be for two members here. So I would prefer just on this.
We didn't quite get to all that, Commissioner Scott, but if anyone did, please share.
I think he said he prefers the way it is now.
Yeah.
You prefer it as is. That's fine, perfect, thank you.
I think it's a good discussion, and again, it's next month is when you do that, but, one of the things that I guess that we have talked about over the years is making the chair a tiebreaker, but that would be something that we could consider too, or the other part of it is too, is that, so the commissioner does vote potentially twice when it comes to rezones, but conditional use permits are your sole discretion unless appealed. So, it'd be interesting to see if all commissioners would feel that they didn't want to vote, later on through the process, so, or no representation on the planning commission. But I can't answer that question tonight, so. But. Okay, well, so again, next month we'll do election of officers, and then I guess I'll visit with our current alternates and see what their wishes are, and then if not, we'll have to come up with Plan B on that part of it, so. But I certainly would think that most of you don't want to be on this board for 20, 30 years, so I mean, we've got to come up with a plan on alternates too, so.
Oh, with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll have our motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.